Imagine finding a cure for one of the biggest public health crises of the 1990s.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're talking about teen pregnancy here. Decades of panic, those old MTV documentaries, massive policy debates, millions of dollars spent on sex ed campaigns.
Right. It was everywhere.
Exactly. And then suddenly it just plummets.
Mm-hmm.
But the cure wasn't a new medicine. It wasn't some groundbreaking educational policy or a new kind of clinic even.
No, not at all.
It was literally a piece of glass and metal in your pocket. And the side effect of this incredibly effective cure was the complete, totally silent demolition of the teenage physical world.
Which is, I mean, it's a really profound way to look at it, because usually when a physical environment is destroyed, there's evidence.
Right, like rubble.
Yeah, exactly. If a local mall gets demolished or a park gets paved over, you can point to the construction equipment. You can literally see what was lost. But in this case, an entire environment, a place where millions of young people spent hours every single day, was just deleted. Deleted everywhere, all at once, across the entire globe, and without a single bulldozer.
So you wouldn't see any rubble. You'd only see the bizarre, rippling behavioral changes of the people who suddenly just had nowhere to go.
Exactly.
And for you listening, that is the mission of today's deep dive. We're exploring a really fascinating 2026 economics paper by Hudson and Masoso Boedo. It's titled The Collapse of Teen Fertility in the Digital Era.
It's a fantastic paper.
It really is.
Yeah.
And our goal today isn't just to talk about birth rates. We are going to uncover how a specific piece of technology fundamentally dismantled the physical environment where human coordination actually happens. So, okay, let's unpack this, because the data point that kicks this whole thing off is just staggering.
It really is.
Around 2007, teen birth rates didn't just dip a little bit, they fell off an absolute cliff.
Yeah, and the sheer uncompromising universality of that drop is what initially grabs your attention as an analyst.
How so?
Well, I mean, if this were just happening in one city or, one country, we can point to local politics or a change in the local economy.
Sure, like a local recession or a new law.
Right. But the researchers tracked data across 128 different countries. High-income nations, low-income nations, places with completely different welfare regimes, entirely different abortion laws, and, contrasting religious traditions.
They're totally different cultures across the board.
Exactly. And every single one of them saw a sharp, unmistakable break in their teen fertility data. And that break, it consistently ties back to a very specific threshold in each country's timeline.
The smartphone shock.
Yep, the smartphone shock. The researchers define it as either the rollout of the iPhone or the exact moment a country crosses 80 mobile cellular subscriptions per 100 people, whichever cal later.
Wow, so 80% basically.
Yeah. Once a nation hit that threshold of high-speed mobile adoption, the bottom just fell out of the teen birth rate.
To really grasp how weird this is, we have to look at what the paper calls the age gradient.
Oh, this is the best part.
It's wild. Let's take the United States, for example. Between 2007 and 2024, the birth rate for the 15 to 19 age group plummeted by an astonishing 71%.
71%. That's huge.
Massive. And then the 20 to 24 age group dropped by 43%. But if you look at women aged 35 to 39, their birth rate actually rose by 9% during that exact same window. It's like a targeted sound wave that only teenagers and young adults can hear.
That age gradient is the crucial fingerprint of this phenomenon. It tells us exactly what kind of shock we're dealing with here. And it allows us to systematically eliminate the usual suspects.
I'm really glad you brought up the usual suspects, because I have to push back immediately.
Go for it.
When people hear cell phones and dropping fertility in the same sentence, the mind goes straight to biology.
Oh, sure. The radiation argument.
Right. We've all seen the headlines. Couldn't this just be cell phone radiation hurting human fertility? Or thinking about the timeline, 2007 and 2008, that was the global financial crisis.
It was.
People generally tend to stop having kids when they lose their jobs and go broke.
It's completely natural to look for broad, sweeping explanations like a recession or, radio frequency radiation. But the age gradient shoots both of those down with surgical precision.
Really? How?
Well, think about it. If it were biological radiation from cell phones in our pockets or an economic recession suppressing the desire to start a family, it would affect 20-something and 30-something women uniformly.
Oh, I see.
After all, 35-year-olds use smartphones just as much as 15-year-olds, right?
Yeah, probably more, honestly.
Exactly. And 35-year-olds were certainly hit hard by the 2008 recession. So a uniform biological or economic effect simply cannot explain why the 35 to 39 age group saw a 9% increase in birth rates rates, while the teenage rates collapsed.
Right, the radiation doesn't check your ID before it affects your biology.
Exactly. And the recession didn't hit every country equally either. The paper points out that the depth of the 2008 crisis varied wildly around the world.
Okay, give me an example.
Australia, for instance. They entirely avoided the 2008 financial recession thanks to a massive mining boom and strong exports to China. Oh, wow.
Yeah, yet their teen birth rate broke from being completely flat to dropping by about 7% a year, right on schedule with their own digital adoption curve.
Okay, so if our bodies haven't fundamentally changed and our bank accounts don't explain it globally, what about healthcare?
Hmm.
I imagine some listeners are wondering if this is just a massive shift in how unintended pregnancies are resolved. Did teenagers just get better access to abortions?
The researchers actually addressed that using data from the Guttmacher Institute. They looked specifically at how pregnancies ended, whether they resulted in birth or abortion.
And what did they find?
Well, between 2007 and 2020, for the 15 to 17 age group, the abortion ratio held incredibly stable. It basically hovered right around 29 to 30% the entire time.
Wait, really? It didn't change.
Nope. The pregnancies weren't just being resolved differently. The pregnancies themselves simply vanished. Conceptions practically ceased to happen at the rates they used to. That is wild. If the actual conceptions disappeared and it's hitting teenagers almost exclusively, the cause has to be something highly specific to the environment of youth.
Exactly.
We know who it affected, but how? I mean, how does a phone stop a pregnancy from happening in the first place?
That brings us to the actual mechanism and the core theory of this whole paper. It's called the coordination model.
Coordination model. Okay.
Yeah. We have to think about how teenagers socialize and spend their time. A teenager's primary goal in allocating their leisure time is simply to be wherever their peers are.
Oh, I mean, think about being 16. If your friends are loitering outside a 7-Eleven, that 7-Eleven is the absolute center of the universe.
Exactly.
They are all logging onto a digital server. You're getting on that server. Nobody wants to be the one guy standing by the slushy machine alone.
Yeah.
You just go where the crowd is.
It's a massive coordination game.
Yeah.
And for decades, that coordination game had a default physical location. The mall, the park, the local hangout spot. But the paper measures what they called the quality-adjusted price of a smartphone. Between 2007 and 2019, that price fell by about 84% in real terms.
And just to clarify for the listener, quality adjusted doesn't just mean the price tag at the store got lower.
Right.
It means you were suddenly getting a supercomputer in your pocket for the price of an old flip phone. Technology became incredibly powerful and incredibly accessible all at once.
Exactly the case. And as that accessible power flooded the market, adoption skyrocketed. Right around 2006, U.S. teen cell phone ownership crossed the 50% threshold.
The tipping point.
Yes, at that exact moment, the network tipped. The physical hangout ceased to be the default because the critical mass of the peer network had migrated.
Wow.
The digital network became the place where everyone was. The in-person equilibrium basically self-undermined and just collapsed.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the paper actually measures this collapse in minutes and hours. They use the American Time Use Survey, or ATUS.
Yeah, the data here is phenomenal.
The numbers paint a picture of a totally transformed daily life. From 2003 to 2019, the amount of time teens spent socializing and communicating in person plummeted from 68 minutes a day to just 38 minutes a day.
It's almost cut in half.
Literally almost cut in half. Meanwhile, what they categorize as computer leisure, so gaming, social media, digital communication, that spiked from 22 minutes a day to 96 minutes a day.
That is the invisible demolition right there. You can literally see the minutes of human interaction migrating from the physical world to the digital world.
Yeah.
But there is a vital distinction we need to make here regarding what kind of time was lost.
Okay.
It's not that teenagers suddenly locked themselves in their closets and refused to see the sun.
Right, because structured activities, things like participating in team sports, club meetings, or band practice, those stayed remarkably flat through this entire period. They held steady at around 56 to 57% participation.
Exactly. What the smartphone replaced wasn't organized, adult-supervised activity. It replaced the unstructured, unsupervised peer contact.
The aimless hanging out.
Yeah.
Moving around with nowhere to go. Sitting on a couch in a friend's basement while their parents were at work.
Which fundamentally alters the demographic math. Because that unstructured, unsupervised peer environment is the exact environment where almost all accidental teen conceptions occur.
Oh, of course.
If you completely remove the physical hangout from the daily routine of adolescence, You mechanically reduce the conception hazard.
Now, if you're listening to this and rolling your eyes thinking, come on, correlation isn't causation, you are right to be skeptical.
Oh, absolutely.
And the researchers knew you would be. Just because smartphones arrived and teen pregnancies dropped doesn't definitively prove that the phones caused the drop by destroying the hangout.
Right.
Couldn't this just mean that teens with smartphones suddenly have incredible access to Wikipedia and digital information about birth control?
Sure, that's a valid hypothesis.
Or maybe this correlates perfectly with the Affordable Care Act rolling out in the U.S., giving teenagers better access to things like IUDs and contraception.
To prove causation, they had to separate the rollout of digital infrastructure from all those other cultural and policy shifts. And they do it using an econometric concept called an instrumental variable.
Okay, lay it on us.
In this case, they use terrain ruggedness.
Terrain ruggedness, meaning literal mountains.
Literal mountains, deep valleys, and steep ravines. You cannot easily build 4G cell towers or lay high-speed fiber optic cables in the Rocky Mountains or the deep cuts of Appalachia.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, it's physically difficult, logistically nightmarish, and incredibly expensive. So the researchers used this geographical ruggedness as a natural experiment.
Because geography doesn't care about politics.
Exactly. Geography is entirely random when it comes to modern healthcare policy or cultural attitudes. This allowed them to isolate counties that got fast internet later simply because their terrain was too bumpy.
That is incredibly clever. The mountains act as a natural delay on the technology, completely independent of whatever the local politicians, school boards, or healthcare clinics are doing.
And the results are undeniable. Those exact same rugged counties that got fast internet later saw much slower declines in teen births.
Wow. Do we have the exact numbers on that?
We do. The researchers calculated that a 10 percentage point increase in broadband penetration caused an 18.9 point larger decline in the teen birth rate.
An 18.9 point decline just from the broadband.
Yes. This isolates the technology from the policy. The faster the internet arrived, the faster the pregnancies disappeared.
And they don't just stop at U.S. geography to prove this isn't a policy fluke. They actually cross the Atlantic to replicate this finding, looking at England and Wales.
The UK is the perfect testing ground to challenge the healthcare policy argument.
Because of the NHS.
Exactly. They have the National Health Service. They provide universal free contraception to teenagers. Their system is completely different from the U.S. patchwork of Medicaid, private insurance, and the Affordable Care Act.
So if it was an American healthcare policy driving this, the UK shouldn't see the same pattern at all. Their baseline access to reproductive health care was already completely different.
But the UK saw the exact same 4G-linked acceleration. Under 18 conception rates in the UK saw a 6.8 times acceleration in their decline post-2007 compared to their pre-2007 trend.
6.8 times.
And in the US, it was a 5.6 times acceleration. The numbers practically mirror each other across the ocean. It definitively proves that this is a global technology shock, not a country-specific healthcare or welfare policy shift.
Okay, let's summarize where we are. The falling price and rising power of smartphones pulled enough kids onto the digital network that the physical hangout collapsed.
Right.
Because the physical hangout collapsed, unstructured, unsupervised time vanished.
Yep.
And because that vanished, the teen birth rate plummeted around the world, completely independent of local laws or healthcare. On the surface, that sounds like a massive public health victory. Less unintended teen pregnancy is generally considered a good thing for educational outcomes and economic stability.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the paper reveals the truly dark side of this equation.
Yeah.
This brings us to the sign flipping test.
This is the part of the paper that genuinely kept me up at night.
It is the crucial test of the coordination model, because going back to your earlier point, if smartphones just made teenagers smarter, if having Google in your pocket just gave young people better access to information about contraception or life choices, then you would expect all outcomes for teens to generally improve.
Right. Better information should lead to better choices across the board.
Exactly.
But if the coordination model is true, if an entire physical peer network was literally destroyed and replaced by an isolating digital one, then the outcomes shouldn't all move in a positive direction.
Outcomes that depend on in-person contact should drop, but outcomes tied to isolation should surge. The signs should flip.
And the data perfectly synchronizes around this exact same 2007 tipping point. The researchers track 5 major behavioral outcomes. The ones that require physical proximity, teen births, sexual activity, and violent crime, arrests all kink sharply downward. They basically nosedive.
It's hard to get arrested for vandalism if you aren't leaving your bedroom.
Exactly. But simultaneously, at that exact same moment, isolation-correlated outcomes, specifically major depression and teen suicide, completely reverse their previous downward trends and surge upward.
It is a chilling confirmation of the model. Smooth, gradual transitions in technology or culture don't cause synchronized, multivariable kinks like this.
No, they don't.
Only a fundamental regime change in how an entire demographic coordinates its time can do that. And to remove any doubt about what was causing this mental health crisis, the researchers ran that exact same terrain ruggedness test, the mountain test, on CDC suicide data.
Oh, wow. So they looked at the flat counties versus the rugged counties again, but this time for self-harm.
Yeah. They found that the exact same flat, easy-to-wire counties that got fast 4G early, the ones that saw teen pregnancies completely collapse.
Yeah.
Those same counties saw a massive causal spike in teen suicides.
To put that in devastatingly real terms, we didn't just see a drop in teen parents in the communities that got fast internet. We saw a measurable, tragic spike in kids taking their own lives. Do we have the specific numbers on that?
We do.
Yeah.
For every 10-point jump in 4G coverage, those counties saw an increase of about 2.7 to 4.0 teen suicide deaths per 100,000.
Oh, my God.
And the baseline average during that period was about 13.9 deaths per 100,000. So we are talking about a massive proportional surge in self-harm, causally linked to the exact same cell towers that brought down the birth rate.
It is a tragic paradox. The same invisible force that cured one societal concern basically engineered a crisis of isolation. And it brings up a really painful realization for parents or policymakers listening to this.
It really does.
Because the natural instinct is to say, well, just take the phone away, send the kid outside. But taking away one kid's phone doesn't fix it.
It doesn't, because of an economic and physical concept called hysteresis.
Hysteresis.
Mhm.
So hysteresis in a network is like trying to keep a party going after the cool kids leave.
Yeah.
Once the critical mass of people move to a new room, taking away one kid's smartphone doesn't bring the party back to the living room.
Right.
The party is physically relocated.
When the price of the smartphone dropped, the peer network moved from the physical world to the digital world. Once the network is on the other side, raising the price of a phone for one individual or a parent confiscating one device doesn't push the network back. The physical network is already gone.
You can't just send a kid outside to play if there's no one outside to play with. The playground is literally empty.
Exactly.
The equilibrium has shifted, and an individual parent or teenager cannot unilaterally shift it back. It would require a coordinated movement of the entire peer group to rebuild that physical hangout space from scratch.
The environment they need to socialize in healthily has been deleted. And that is why the mental health crisis operates in perfect tandem with the fertility collapse. They are two sides of the exact same coin.
Which brings this entirely back to you, the listener. Because while this deep dive has been relentlessly focused on teenagers and the startling collapse of teen fertility, this paper is really a broader warning about the physics of human coordination.
Yeah, that's the big takeaway.
It proves that technology doesn't just hand us a new tool to put in our tool belt. When a technology hits a certain critical mass, an invisible tipping point, it can entirely dismantle and relocate the physical environments where human life actually happens.
It forces us to ask what other physical environments are currently vulnerable to this kind of invisible demolition.
And that leaves us with a final thought for you to really mull over today. If an 84% drop in the price of a smartphone was enough to completely eradicate the physical adolescent peer network, what happens when the next technology drops in price?
Right.
What happens to adult professional networks or local civic life? Or the vibrancy of our neighborhoods when the price of AI-simulated companionship or immersive spatial computing drops past its own invisible tipping point? Are we going to see adult isolation spike while some other metric mysteriously drops?
It's a scary thought.
Are we already standing in the middle of the next coordination collapse, completely unaware that our environment is being deleted right out from under us? Just like that mall we talked about at the very beginning, the rubble won't be physical. It will be hidden in the data. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.